Hey, welcome back to Well Traveled. Boy, do I have some exciting news to share with you. Look, the point of this channel is to bring you lifestyle changes that can benefit your health and keep you on the road. If you're older, if you're retired, as I am, you know the biggest threat to continuing to travel is your health. And so that's what we're all about here. Now, if you're looking at some of our recent videos, we're really focused right now on having you change your relationship with the sun. So that's a long way of saying get in the sun. You want to see the sunrise, you want to get a tan, you don't want to tan with sunscreen, you want to see the sunset, and you want to be exposed to the sun as much as you can without burning, without excess. Now that sounds crazy. That's the opposite of everything you're being told in the media, dermatologists, etc. And the biggest fear is skin cancer, the deadly kind of skin cancer, melanoma. And the fact is that melanoma is extremely rare, but the effects of the sun might not be rare. The effects of a lack of sun might not be so rare. Now, as I've mentioned before, it's really hard to study human beings, to track them a long time, to separate out all the other factors that go into something, before we can determine that it made the difference, etc. And so I'm sitting here in my Airbnb and I'm really excited right now because I have confirmation of everything that I've been trying to tell you about the power of the sun on your health. So listen to this. New research out of the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, they tracked 419,000 people who live in the UK. It's not a very sunny place, right? And so the sun impact was, less than maybe other places, but also maybe easier to identify and track. Now, they also followed these people for 15 years. This is unbelievable. To get this kind of data on this large of a group of people for this long of a time is very rare when it comes to research on what's best for your health. Most of this kind of research is done on drugs because that's where the money is. There's no money in telling you to get into the sun. So this is fascinating research I'm really excited about. Now, no study's perfect. All of them have their flaws. All of them have their holes. But this one's fascinating. Lots of people studied for or watched for a long time, and they broke all these people into three different categories. Low exposure to the sun and UV light, medium exposure, and then high exposure. And then they tracked them by mortality. When did they die? How many died? Now you might ask, okay, why are we tracking mortality in a study on the sun? Well, all your research on human beings, it's very difficult to sort out why something is working on me and why it isn't. Maybe I'm unhealthy, or maybe I'm on a particular drug. Maybe I have a genetic difference. And so if we're doing a drug test or a health test, all those different factors get in the way. That's one of the reasons why they went around and interviewed all the people that were over 100 years old. They did this a few years back. They were hoping to find a clear factor that identified what all of them did, to have that kind of longevity. And most of them smoked. Most of them ate meat. Most of them didn't exercise. All of them drank. And so there was no key factor that they could look at, although it is humorous and it fits with this channel's message to you. The one factor that they found that contributed to longevity all over the world, to all the people over 100, is that they did not go to the doctor. That was the only thing that they could identify showing some common factor in this long-lived nature that they had. So here we're using mortality because there's nothing like death to end the argument. You're not healthy when you die. And of course, they're not following you for accidents or things like that. They're strictly tracking deaths by normal causes. And so they took these three groups that were in various stages of UV and sun exposure and tracked the amount of deaths that they had and compared that against the amount of deaths specifically from melanoma and other types of deadly skin cancer. So they wanted to compare the risk of being in the sun from a cancer standpoint and the risk of increased death from not being in the sun. Okay, is that making sense, I hope? And so what they found, and this is fascinating because I'm going to read you the exact quote from the research. I'm also posting the study down below for you so you can look at it for yourself. A little hard to read, a little complicated how they broke this out and how they tracked it statistically. But they do give you summary data. And so now I'm going to read it to you. If everyone were high sunbeam, and BEEM is the acronym they created to measure people's amount of sunlight and UV light, okay? And so they had low sunbeam, high sunbeam, medium sunbeam. If everyone were high sunbeam, in other words, if everyone had the max exposure to sun that these particular people in the high exposure group did out of the 415,000, if everyone in the 415,000 would have had that amount of sunlight and UV exposure, there would have been 4,736 fewer all-cause deaths. 4,736 fewer all-cause deaths, including 953 fewer cardiovascular deaths, heart attacks, and 469 fewer cancer deaths. Now, what that's telling us, and that's basically comparing the high sun exposure to the low sun exposure people in this cohort of 419,000 that they tracked for 15 years. So if you're in the higher group, if everybody would have been in the higher group, there would have been 4,736 fewer deaths in that 15 years, particularly fewer deaths from cardiovascular disease and cancer. Now, this is incredible. This should blow the top off your head. What this is saying is that there's an incredible longevity impact to your health at higher doses of the sun, at greater amounts of sun exposure. Now, again, this study's imperfect. It's not measuring precisely how much they were in the sun, et cetera. They were simply grouping them by a lot of exposure versus a minimal exposure, that sort of thing. But let's go on, because obviously what this is telling us is at a fundamental level, at the level of death, so in terms of living longer, which is, I think, probably the greatest measurement of health, one could argue, there would be 4,736 deaths. But we need to then look at what kind of skin cancer deaths were caused by that increased exposure to the sun and UV light, okay? So I'm reading on, and they're comparing that 4,736 number, and that would have been compared to 23 additional melanoma deaths and 12 additional keratinocyte cancer deaths. So that's 35 skin cancer deaths occurred in excess among the higher sun exposure people. Okay, so the high versus the low had 35 additional cancer deaths. That's not good, right? But it would have had 4,736 all-cause mortality fewer deaths. So the higher folks have a slight increase in skin cancer deaths, and that shouldn't be minimized. You don't want a sunburn. You do want to protect yourself at the height of the sun with the highest UV rays in the afternoon typically, or the midday typically. So you still have to be smart about your sun exposure, but we're comparing apples to oranges here. We're saying, get out of the sun, protect yourself, wear sunscreen, it's dangerous. And we're going to save 35 people out of 419,000. 35 people. But instead, if we get you in the sun, and in this group, the highest amount of sun, there would be 4,736 fewer deaths, okay? Look, there shouldn't be any argument anymore. There's no question that the sun is good for your health. It's good for your longevity. It's good for your immune system. It creates vitamin D. It creates melatonin for your sleep. It activates cortisol in the morning and all the hormonal functions. It turns on your clock, not only your basic circadian rhythm clock, but the clocks throughout your body. There's a clock in your skin, your pancreas, etc. I could go on and on and on with all the benefits that sun exposure gives you, including a tan. And I cover that in other videos that you can find right here. But what makes this so exciting is this is a lot of people tracked for a lot of years and shows a massive benefit from this lifestyle that we're really urging you with all our heart to change. Get in the sun, see sunrise, get a tan. All right, as always, we need you. I need you to subscribe. I need you to like, click that bell. We're going to be doing regular content. But if we're going to reach other people, if we're going to continue to be able to bring you what I think is life-changing information, we need your help. All right, see you next time.